The San Antonio Spurs are heading to the NBA Finals, and honestly, it still doesn't feel real. They pulled it off on the road in Oklahoma City in Game 7 against the defending champions, against the league MVP, and inside a building where the Thunder had never lost a Game 7 since moving to OKC. Still, the Spurs walked in and handled business when it mattered most. Before the playoffs, everyone kept talking about this team's experience. But after locking up their spot in the finals, head coach Mitch Johnson summed it up perfectly. They don't care about the word experience. Victor Wembanyama just gave basketball one of its biggest moments in years. That might sound dramatic, but after watching the Spurs take down the Thunder, it's hard not to feel that way. Oklahoma City is an incredible team, no question about it. But as this series went on, a lot of fans started getting frustrated. The flopping, the grabbing, the constant physical battles, it became exhausting to watch at times. What made San Antonio's win even sweeter was the way they got it done. They played basketball the simple way. They moved the ball, pushed the pace, trusted their young players in huge moments, and never backed down from the pressure. The Spurs knocked down 17 three-pointers in a hostile Game 7 environment. They also forced 14 Thunder turnovers and turned those mistakes into 19 points. This wasn't some lucky break or miracle performance. San Antonio earned this win from start to finish and looked like the better team throughout the night. Even Oklahoma City's side couldn't deny it. Yeah, they were just the better team tonight start to finish, and then every time we try to cut into it and take control of the game, it felt like they had an answer. So hats off to them. That says everything you need to know. The Spurs played with more trust, more energy, more confidence, and more courage. Their style of basketball was fast, free-flowing, and fun to watch. And leading the charge was Wembanyama, a player who keeps winning people over every time he steps on the floor. He's not out there searching for shortcuts. He's competing, battling, and doing everything he can to help his team win. Sure, late in the game there were a few moments where emotions and intensity took over, but that's what happens when everything is on the line. Then came the final buzzer. Wembanyama sprinted towards center court, overwhelmed with emotion, shouting, celebrating, and soaking in the biggest win of his career so far. Moments later, he delivered a post-game quote that showed exactly how much this meant to him. I want to win so bad. It's like my life depends on it. That's the kind of passion fans love to see from a superstar. If you're still not sold on Victor Wembanyama at this point, there's a good chance you're probably rooting for the other side. Because performances and moments like this are exactly what make players become the faces of the league. Heading into the fourth quarter of Game 7, the outcome was completely up for grabs. The Spurs held a slim 3-point lead. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander already had 31 points, and Oklahoma City had fought their way back after it looked like San Antonio might pull away. You could feel the tension building inside the arena. It seemed like the Thunder were preparing to make one final championship push, but then the Spurs delivered their best fourth quarter of the entire season. Kevin Johnson opened the frame with a huge three-pointer, and Cason Wallace fired right back with one of many answers from the Thunder. Then Dylan Harper came flying in for an offensive rebound, kicked it back out, and Keldon Johnson buried another three-pointer. Keep in mind, this is Game 7 on the road with a trip to the NBA Finals on the line. Keldon hadn't exactly been lighting it up throughout the playoffs, but when San Antonio needed somebody to step forward, he answered the call in a huge way. A few possessions later, De'Aaron Fox pulled up and drilled a massive three of his own. Then, Victor Wembanyama delivered a moment that had fans losing their minds. He stepped back and knocked down a deep three right in his defender's face. Seriously, that's the kind of shot that makes you jump off the couch. We're talking about a player nearly 7.5 feet tall, moving like a guard and hitting shots that most players wouldn't even attempt. As wild as those moments were, the biggest drama was still ahead. Harper grabbed another rebound, pushed the pace, and found Keldon Johnson streaking down the floor for a fast break finish. Just like that, San Antonio exploded on a 14-5 run and suddenly held an 11-point lead. The Spurs looked like they were grabbing complete control of the game at exactly the right time. Then things got tense in a hurry. Wembanyama picked up his fifth foul, and you could almost feel the nervous energy spread through the building. For a moment, it looked like the game might start slipping away. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the Thunder immediately began cutting into the lead. Wembanyama had to be extra careful, and with him heading to the bench, the pressure shifted onto everyone else. The non-Wembanyama minutes had been a major challenge throughout this series. If the Spurs were going to survive, they needed somebody to step up and give them a few huge plays. That's exactly when Luke Kornet delivered one of the biggest moments of the night. Harper turned the ball over, Oklahoma City took off in transition, and Isaiah Hartenstein looked ready for an easy finish. Then, out of nowhere, Kornet raced back and pinned the shot against the glass. It was the kind of play that instantly changes momentum. In the biggest game of the season, with everything hanging in the balance, Kornet came through with what might have been the most important defensive play of his career. Then, it was time for Julian Champagnie to make his mark. Forget all the old playoff nicknames people throw around. This was Game 7 Julian Champagnie. With just over 5 minutes remaining, he stepped into a huge three-pointer and knocked it down without hesitation. That shot carried enormous weight because every possession felt like it could decide who was going to the finals. And then there was Dylan Harper, who continues to look nothing like a rookie. He was making winning plays all over the court. He fought for an offensive rebound and put it back in, then later calmly drilled a step-back three over the league MVP. That's not supposed to happen from a first-year player in a Game 7 conference finals battle. Yet Harper kept playing with confidence beyond his years. To Oklahoma City's credit, they refused to quit. Cason Wallace was absolutely on fire late in the game. He poured in 14 fourth-quarter points and kept dragging the Thunder back into the fight. Every time it felt like San Antonio had finally created enough separation, Wallace showed up with another clutch bucket, another big play, or another momentum swing. At the same time, that tells part of the story. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander finished with an efficient 35 points and 9 assists, but despite the strong numbers, the Spurs kept finding answers whenever Oklahoma City threatened to take control. But when the fourth quarter arrived, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander managed just 4 points and didn't get to the free throw line a single time with the season hanging in the balance. Instead, it was Cason Wallace doing everything he could to keep Oklahoma City alive. Then there was a possession where Alex Caruso ended up taking a contested pull-up three. Honestly, that's probably not how most people expected those final minutes to unfold when the Thunder have so much offensive talent on the floor. One sequence especially stood out. Wembanyama was sitting on 5 fouls, and SGA attacked the lane right at him. But instead of forcing the issue, the possession ended without drawing that 6th foul. Even if the shot wasn't going to fall, putting pressure on a defender in foul trouble often creates opportunities. It was one of those moments that immediately gets people talking because the stakes were so high and every possession mattered. Even after that, the drama wasn't over. Stephen Castle nearly sent Spurs fans into panic mode by turning the ball over 3 times in the final minute and 40 seconds. The pressure was unbelievable. The crowd was roaring, and it felt like the game could swing at any second. Yet somehow, despite every challenge, San Antonio still found a way to close it out and punch its ticket to the NBA Finals. What makes this victory feel so much bigger than just another Game 7 is that Victor Wembanyama sits at the center of everything. Yes, Keldon Johnson hit huge shots. Dylan Harper made massive plays. Julian Champagnie stepped up. De'Aaron Fox delivered key buckets. Luke Kornet came through with a huge block. All of those moments mattered. But the reason San Antonio was even in this position is because they have a player that opposing teams still haven't fully figured out. Throughout this series, Oklahoma City kept searching for answers, and time after time, Wembanyama forced them to adjust their entire approach. Right now, a growing number of fans and analysts believe Wembanyama belongs in the conversation for the best player in the world. Not years from now, not after some future leap. Right now, he's already making a serious case. The impact he has on both ends of the floor is unlike almost anyone else in basketball today. A huge part of that comes from defense. Defense doesn't always get the same attention as scoring, but it remains a massive part of winning basketball. Wembanyama's defensive presence changes everything for his team. He doesn't just affect individual possessions. He changes the way opponents think about the game entirely, and it goes far beyond blocked shots. Sure, the highlight blocks grab attention, but that's only part of the story. The real impact comes from the shots players never even attempt. It's the hesitation when someone reaches the paint. It's the second guessing. It's the decision to pass the ball instead of challenging him at the rim. Players know he's there, and that awareness affects every possession. That influence showed up throughout this series. Before the Western Conference Finals, SGA was averaging 30.9 points per game while shooting 55% from the field. Against San Antonio, those numbers dropped to 25.9 points per game on 41% shooting. Basketball is always a team game, but Wembanyama's defensive presence was impossible to ignore during those 7 games. Then there's the offensive side of things. In Game 7, he scored 22 points, knocked down 3 of his 5 shots from beyond the arc, played nearly 42 exhausting minutes, battled through foul trouble, and delivered one of the biggest shots of the night with that clutch step-back 3 in the 4th quarter. He didn't need a flashy 40-point performance to dominate the game. In some ways, that makes the performance even more impressive. He wasn't overwhelming the box score with scoring alone, yet his fingerprints were all over the outcome. Every defensive stop, every altered shot, every rebound, every key possession seemed to connect back to him in some way. That's what makes Wembanyama such a unique player. Even on a night when his offensive numbers weren't at their absolute peak, he still managed to influence the game at an elite level from start to finish. And the scary part for the rest of the league is that this Spurs team isn't built around one player doing everything alone. Wembanyama may be the centerpiece, but San Antonio keeps getting contributions from all over the roster, and that's a huge reason why this group has become such a dangerous team. This Spurs team is the real deal. This wasn't a one-man show or some lucky run through the playoffs. Everybody contributed when the pressure was at its highest, and Julian Champagnie was one of the biggest reasons why San Antonio survived Game 7. Champagnie finished with 20 points on 6 of 11 shooting and posted a team-best plus 16 in a hostile road environment. Every time Oklahoma City looked ready to make a serious push, it felt like Champagnie showed up with another huge three-pointer to silence the crowd. At this point, fans might as well start calling him Game 7 Champagnie, because he absolutely earned that nickname. When you knock down 6 three-pointers in a conference finals Game 7, you're entering elite territory. In fact, the list of players with more than 5 made threes in a conference finals Game 7 is incredibly short. Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and now Julian Champagnie. That's some serious company to be joining, and it's a performance Spurs fans won't forget anytime soon. Then there's Dylan Harper, who continues to play far beyond his years. The rookie finished with 12 points, 7 rebounds, 3 massive offensive boards, and one of the coldest shots of the night, a step-back 3 over the league MVP in a Game 7 on the road. That's the kind of confidence and poise you rarely see from a young player in a moment that big. De'Aaron Fox was also outstanding, and the box score doesn't even tell the full story. Yes, he finished with 15 points, 5 assists, and 3 steals, but his biggest impact came through timing and leadership. Whenever things started getting shaky, Fox seemed to settle everyone down. The Spurs would hit a rough stretch, and he'd respond with a smart play, a key basket, or a calm decision that helped steady the group. For such a young roster, having a veteran presence like that was huge. As for Stephon Castle, the ending wasn't perfect, and nobody needs to pretend otherwise. Those late turnovers had Spurs fans holding their breath. Every mistake felt massive because of what was at stake. But that's also what makes his performance so fascinating. He's still developing, still learning, and still growing into the player he's capable of becoming. What stands out most isn't perfection, it's everything else he brings to the floor. His versatility, energy, defensive effort, and ability to impact the game in different ways continue to jump off the screen. Players his age aren't supposed to handle this kind of responsibility on a championship-contending team, yet Castle keeps finding himself in huge moments. And that's what makes San Antonio's rise so remarkable. This was a 22-year-old Victor Wembanyama, a 21-year-old Stephon Castle, and a 20-year-old Dylan Harper helping eliminate the defending champions before most people believed they were ready for this stage. That's an incredible foundation, and it feels like they're only getting started. From the very beginning, I picked the Spurs to win this series in 7 games, not because it felt safe, not because it seemed easy. Actually, the opposite was true. Every instinct kept reminding me that Oklahoma City was the defending champion, had the league MVP, possessed more playoff experience, and looked like one of the toughest teams in basketball. But every time I looked deeper at the matchup, I kept coming back to the same conclusion. San Antonio had the ultimate game changer. They had the one player capable of completely altering how opponents attack offensively. Wembanyama's ability to protect the paint forces teams to adjust everything they do. Against most teams, you can keep attacking the rim and eventually find success. Against him, every possession becomes a different challenge. That was the biggest reason I leaned toward the Spurs. Not because victory was guaranteed, but because from a basketball strategy standpoint, the matchup kept pointing in their direction. Over 7 games, those advantages started adding up, and eventually San Antonio got the job done. And before moving on, there's one more important shout-out. The Corgi deserves some credit too. Picking the Spurs in 7 was one thing, but that dog somehow managed to predict every single game of the series correctly. That's a level of basketball forecasting that deserves some respect. At this rate, people might want to see what the Corgi predicts before locking in their finals picks, but jokes aside, what we just watched was special. The San Antonio Spurs are heading back to the NBA Finals. The New York Knicks are rested, waiting, and preparing for what could be an unforgettable championship matchup. And maybe the most exciting part of all is that the NBA's biggest prize will now be decided with some of the league's brightest young stars on center stage. The thought of watching Victor Wembanyama play NBA Finals games in Madison Square Garden is absolutely incredible. The spotlight couldn't be bigger, the stakes couldn't be higher, and basketball fans are about to get a series loaded with drama, storylines, and superstar talent. Right now, one thing is clear: the Spurs got it done. Wembanyama has officially arrived as one of the faces of the league, and the future of the NBA suddenly looks very exciting.